In this video, we're going to look at artificial intelligence, and I subtitled this Some Interaction because we're not going to be able to cover all things. For one thing, we distinguish between two types of artificial intelligence. The one type is the simple general artificial intelligence, which relies upon information that's out there on the internet. The other is superhuman intelligence, and we could argue that superhuman intelligence occurs when an expert asks an artificial intelligence model a question and the expert cannot tell whether the answer is provided by a robot, that is the artificial intelligence, or a human being. If that occurs, the so-called Turing test has been met. The reason for artificial intelligence is simply the power of computers has increased so much, as mentioned in an earlier video, that it is now not as expensive to use artificial intelligence because of the available computing power. And we see what the cost of computing power has done is it's dramatically fallen, whereas the power, the actual ability to process material, process information has increased tremendously. So what is artificial intelligence? Well, there is no single AI product. There are many. Copilot, for example, GAI, Grok, ChatGPT are all available on the iPhone, for example. In fact, G.AI has an offer that if you pay $130, you get a lifetime subscription to its use. But in looking at it on December 4th, 2025, I had 5 hours to take up the offer. An earlier time when I went to that same site, I had to pay $150 for a lifetime, and again I had 5 hours to take up the offer. But I'm not ready to jump into paying a fee to use AI, as it's still a question for me as to which one I should pay for, which one I should use. So there are many AI products that create and mark exams, ones that diagnose ailments, that do complicated math, that draw realistic pictures of people, scenes, etc., and ones that even rewrite or write papers. Some of this is indicated in a few minutes here in the video. The problem is that ChatGPT only provides information from the internet, and some of it can be wrong. Some information is simply made up, and we call that the AI hallucinates. But new products are evolving that avoid this, and as mentioned, the Turing test has yet to be passed. Here I've asked ChatGPT to look at and provide a summary of general purpose AI models, foundational models. And you can see that these large language models, such as ChatGPT, have been adapted to do many tasks. ChatGPT is produced by OpenAI, Claude by Anthropic, Gemini is Google DeepMind, and there are others here as well. These AIs can solve math problems, generate and critique course outlines, they can create essays with rubrics, and they can simulate expert consultations in health, law, etc. Now, we can look at AI for health diagnostics, and I suggest that you pause the video if you want to look at this in more detail. The same thing here with mathematics and STEM solvers. STEM refers to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. OpenAI code can be used to do regression, do plots, solve systems of equations, and things like MathGPT can be used to do step-by-step solutions for mathematical problems. Symbolic math is quite well done now in this, as we will see later in the video. And then there are education and course design AIs AI graders, and writing assistants. And here is a summary table of that. And as I mentioned, you can pause things and look at it somewhat more. Spending on AI and energy needs. Huge spending is required to achieve superintelligence, or what is sometimes referred to as superhuman intelligence. OpenAI is expected to spend $500 billion on a Stargate project. Meta AI's 2025 infrastructure investment is supposedly in the range of $66 to $72 billion, and it includes funding for large-scale supercomputing clusters such as Prometheus and Hyperion. It requires huge amounts of energy to run these models, to train these models. Prometheus, for example, has to use 1 gigawatt of capacity, and Hyperion up to 5 gigawatts of capacity. That means that they need to have 1 gigawatt continually to run this model, or 5 gigawatts, which, if you recall chapter 10 on energy, that 1 gigawatt is the capacity, but if it's running continuously, that means for an hour you're using an energy of 5 gigawatt hours, which is quite large, which is the energy required or produced by 5 fairly large power plants. So these particular AIs, they gobble up a lot of electricity. So what can artificial intelligence do? It can diagnose trends, not diseases, in healthcare data, solve symbolic math problems, build entire courses, grade and give detailed feedback on writing, simulate expert conversations, and with tools like advanced data analysis, it can run statistical models, regressions, charts, similar to R or Python. And we will see a little bit of that when we look at regression analysis and math programming in other videos. What are the possible harms? Well, there's bias and discrimination. AI systems can reflect and amplify biases present in their training data. This can lead to discriminatory outcomes in hiring, lending, law enforcement, and healthcare. There's the privacy invasion. AI enables large-scale surveillance and data extraction, often without user consent. Facial recognition, predictive tracking, and data mining. And we see that in China, where individuals can be watched and given scores as to how they perform in society. There's an ability for misinformation and deep fakes to occur. Generative AI can already create highly convincing fake images, videos, and texts, as we will see a little later in this video. There's a threat to public trust, the possibility of destabilizing democratic discourse and resulting in violence or manipulation of elections. Job displacement is a problem. For example, AI is expected to replace computer programmers for the most part by 2027. And there's problems of security and weaponization. AI technologies can be used to develop autonomous weapons or cyber attack tools. These applications raise the risk of uncontrollable conflict, accidental escalations, and new forms of terrorism or warfare. In fact, there may be a 10 to 20% chance that humans could be wiped off the face of the earth, as The Economist points out, and as a recent book by 2 experts in AI with the foreboding title, "If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies." The subtitle is "Why Superhuman AI Would Kill Us All." There's a lack of accountability, perhaps, with AI. For example, a self-driving car, if it's in an accident, is it the result of the software in the car, the AI, or is it a result of the driver? There's possible healthcare misdiagnoses. There are legal or moral responsibilities that may be ambiguous, and it undermines justice and public trust in the use of AI. And then there's the environmental impact. We've already talked about the amount of computational power required and the significant energy that leads to CO2 emissions. Massive data centers also consume significant water required for cooling. So these are environmental costs that are overlooked. And in fact, the challenge of AI, or the rush to build larger AI in a competitive environment, has sort of led to the downplaying of the whole issue of climate change. I'm going to look at some examples of how I've used AI and what the result has been. So example number one, I attached a Word file and I asked AI, ChatGPT, to create a PowerPoint presentation of some 20 slides for use in the classroom. It created this presentation that I could then download. The problem was that it was not a very good presentation, and I had to start from scratch basically and do it. So it could not do what I asked it in terms of what I expected from it. A second example was I was asking students how to run a regression in R. So I was teaching students how to run a regression using the software tool R. There's another video which explains how this is done in R. I told them to go to ChatGPT and enter a brief description of what they want. In other words, ask ChatGPT the following: create R code to download data from Excel and use it to run a regression. So the basic R code that loads data from an Excel file and runs a linear regression is given by AI as follows. So assume your Excel file has a sheet named sheet 1 with columns Y dependent variable and X1 and X2 the independent variables. The R code is then provided, so you install the packages readxl and a package called Broom for tidy regression output. It's not required, you could do it another way as well, but this is the way that this particular AI request answered it. So we have all of the data, the summary, and this runs the regression, and the summary provides the output. And AI then tells you to replace path to your Excel file, so this file path, with the actual path to the file. And it gives you then instructions on how to run that code. Very helpful. All right, so this is the R file generated by ChatGPT. It needs a bit of work, or quite some work, for the student to run the regression, but they catch on very quickly. Code is not that long. So example number 3. Consider the difference between ChatGPT and DeepSeek, which is the Chinese counterpart. From what I understand, ChatGPT searches the entire internet, whereas DeepSeek is trained to look only at the component that might be relevant to the issue. It chooses to look only at the specialists. So I asked both of them, briefly, in no more than 2 paragraphs, explain the difference between bookkeeping and accounting. This is the answer that's provided by ChatGPT, and you can pause the video and read this if you like, because the answer from DeepSeek follows. Now notice the way that this particular slide looks, or this particular answer looks, compared to the next one. All right, very much the same. The answer is very much the same. And if you look at, if you compare this to the previous one by either stopping the video and going back or pausing the video, then you'll find that the answers are pretty well identical. A fourth example, I was interested in creating a climate model with 4 carbon pools and 2 temperature layers. The R script is first provided, and then it is handy to ask for a mathematical representation of the model. And finally, I asked AI to create an ordinary differential equation version of the R script. We'll see how it does. So here's what I asked. Create a climate model with 4 carbon pools: atmosphere, upper ocean, deep ocean, and land, and 2 temperature layers, atmosphere and ocean, and write the code, R code, to match the description. Here's the response from ChatGPT. So it comes and it explains this all, and then it creates a model along the lines of the dynamic integrated climate and economy model of William Nordhaus, who won a Nobel Prize in economics for it. And that this is the kind of research I was undertaking when I asked this. And here we have the R code. And if you want to see the R code, you could you can pause the video again. The model is not calibrated and the values are illustrative. And here's what the R code looks like that it gave me. All right, it's two slides here, 2 parts to it. And I then asked for that explanation, which it gives. All right, this is all from ChatGPT. And I asked for the equations for the ordinary differential equation model. And I could download the climate model as an R file to use in RStudio. And you could learn about RStudio and the R file in another video in this sequence. But when I ran, upon downloading and running the R script, it gave me this. ChatGPT climate model with no changes to the code. Now it's unrealistic, all right, but it does give you an idea of what things look like. So this is the atmospheric carbon, so the increase in carbon in the atmosphere, the increase in atmospheric temperature, the increase in upper ocean carbon, and the ocean temperature. Of course, you would need to do a lot of modification in order to make this code somewhat more realistic. But nonetheless, ChatGPT does a decent job of creating some model that you can then adjust for your own needs. A 5th example, suppose one is writing an essay, preparing a lecture, preparing a talk, etc., and needs a short description of Milton Friedman's contribution to economics. Here's how it looks when questioning ChatGPT and getting back an answer. A very good, reasonably detailed answer. When I asked, provide a 200 to 250 word summary of Milton Friedman's contribution to economics and society. And if you want to read that, you can stop or pause the video. And same thing for this next one, where I asked, in light of Milton Friedman's contributions, what was the contribution of Ayn Rand and how did it influence Friedman, or did it? And again, there's some interesting perspective there from ChatGPT, from AI. And a 6th example, I thought that we were in a business school at Trinity Western University in the MBA program, and it has an MBA program and a separate MA leadership program. Would there be benefits to integrating these programs? And who else to ask but ChatGPT? So the question was, how do the global leadership and MBA programs differ at Trinity Western University, and should they be amalgamated for efficiency reasons? And here's a description of the global leadership program, the MA in leadership. It's a 17-month full-time or 2.5 years part-time program. It tells you what the cost is, and we do the same thing for the MBA program, including its costs and accreditation. And you notice that AACBSB accreditation is via the School of Business membership, and it has international partners that accredit the Great Wall of China MBA program in China. And what's interesting is, and you can pause the video to get more details. What's interesting is when I asked for the key differences, I got a table of these differences. And one of the outcomes is that leadership development across sectors focus on values and servant leadership, whereas the MBA is business management, strategy, international operations, and nonprofit organizational leadership. And one is meant for a broad kind of spectrum, broad brush approach, whereas the MBA is meant for career advancement in business, nonprofits, international roles, and executive leadership. Should they be amalgamated? And there are some possible benefits and arguments against, and then a conclusion. Whether you agree with it or not depends on your own perspective. You can pause this to look at the details in more if you like. And then finally, I asked an example. I wanted to know if ChatGPT could draw realistic pictures. So I used Sora, which is a part of ChatGPT, and the following photograph, whatever you want to call it, was generated. I asked for Sora to create a picture of an economics instructor graphing supply and demand on a whiteboard, and that's exactly what I got. All right, but then thinking that I should look at, without prejudice, what about a woman teaching supply and demand on a whiteboard to a university classroom? And I got this response here. Notice two things: that quantity is spelt wrong. There's a C there instead of a T, and the L is missing in supply, which is indicative of the fact that ChatGPT or AI still has a long ways to go. So recall the great sums of money being spent on AI with the objective of artificial general intelligence. But really, we're talking not about general intelligence, we're talking about artificial superhuman intelligence, which is expected by 2030. Humanoids are playing soccer against humans by 2050, according to a source at the University of Delft in the Netherlands. So now we have humanoids. These are robots that play soccer against humans, which is already occurring. They're already doing experiments of this sort. But by 2050, they expect that humanoids would be, a team of humanoids could take on a team of humans. That would be, to me, indicative of a level of artificial intelligence that I would not expect. There are massive job losses in some sectors, with the economists, for example, arguing that there are going to be gains by those holding stocks, assets in other words, while the lower classes will be made worse off. Computer programmers can already be replaced by 2027, and the head of programming sections by 2030. Robotics will replace many activities such as taxi service, truck hauling, etc. And economic growth rates well above 5% per year are projected by some. Interesting. So the great educational rethink. Well, how would that affect, say, a school of business? I would suggest that a school of business will do better than a university as a whole. And if you consider the model after Corvinus University or the Hague School of Applied Science, both of which are, well, Corvinus is a private university, the Hague is not, but both have focused on business education, highly technical business education. What would you then have to teach in a business school? Well, accounting, although there's a chance that accountants will no longer be needed because AI would replace them. Process manufacturing, computer design, and robots will probably replace humans. What about information technology? Would it be gone? What would you need to emphasize? Leadership, ethics, management, economics? What would you emphasize at a university level? Well, you might want to go back and make theology the center of university course offerings. You may need to get rid of some woke programs. Mathematics would be important, but only to help people think better. And then one has to rethink programs like history, criminology, psychology, healthcare, etc. You might want to focus more on personal relationships with less focus on chemistry and physics, and maybe center a university curriculum around business education as well. These are just some thoughts that one might want to consider because, of course, universities are going to be impacted big time by artificial intelligence. I hope this helps somewhat. Thank you.